officially now week 5 of the NFL. The Eagles, after the bye, they are back in action. And, of course, they're taking on the Lions. They've won 6 of their last 8 games against the Lions. Unfortunately, one of them wasn't last year where they got whipped on Thanksgiving Day, one of the ugliest games you can remember in the Chip Kelly era. That was on Thanksgiving Day. Turron Davenport, USA Today Eagles Wire, joins us. You know, Turron, 1 year later, these two teams seem like they are going in a very different direction.
Most definitely. You look at that Eagles defense and also the play from Carson Wentz that has them as an ascending team. They are ranked in the top 5 in a lot of different power rankings. So you're 100% right. The Lions, they're ranked in the bottom. So you're right. They're going 2 different directions.
Yeah, and, the Eagles on that day looked disorganized, disinterested. That game there could be the reason why Chip Kelly is no longer here. What are some of the key, on top of drafting Wentz, but what are some of the key things that the Eagles have done to change what happened on that day where they seemed, disorganized and apathetic? The fan base seemed like they were done with disorganization. What are some of the key things that have happened over the year that changed that?
It's just a completely different mentality, a belief, a feeling in the building. When Doug Peterson came in, he brought Jim Schwartz with him. He brought guys like Greg Lewis. Corey Unlin was already there, but these are all guys. Deuce Staley was already there. These are all coaches that just they have that aggressive, especially Schwartz, that aggressive mindset, that attacking arrogance that they have. And you could just tell when you watch practice during training camp, you really saw Jim Schwartz just really influx, his mentality, his mindset. And the guys have bought in, and it's at a point now where not only are they playing for themselves, they're playing for their coaching staff, and they don't want to shortchange anybody else. So it's a full effort, and I think that the team is really, coming together. They pray together. There was an article about that recently, and these guys are strong in their faith. And it's just nice to see a group of guys come together the way they are, and the results are showing in the win column.
Yeah, Turron, you mentioned that coaching staff. I've been so impressed by it. Everyone talks about Jim Schwartz, and they rightfully should. You mentioned Greg Lewis. I know you love the job he's doing. But I look at what they put together for Carson Wentz and the fact that Doug Peterson played quarterback at this level. Frank Reich played quarterback at this level. John DeFilippo played the position in college. Talk about what they've surrounded Carson Wentz with and how that has contributed to his success.
I think we need to add one more aspect to that, and that's Chase Daniel also as a player coach, so to speak, and just the way that he gets Wentz, helps Wentz get prepared. They're in the building early together watching film. And really what they've set up is just a quarterback incubator, and that's what allowed Wentz to have this instant success that he's had. And then a lot of people, you don't give Doug Peterson and Frank Reich, the coaching staff, they don't get enough credit for the play design and also the play calls because they're making it, I'm not going to say they're making it easy, but they're making it more conducive for Wentz to have the type of success that he's having. So you're 100% right. When you have guys that have played the position in Frank Reich, Doug Peterson, in the league, and then also in college with Coach Flip, now you have guys that can really understand, okay, I know you were in this situation, and I know you wanted to bypass this read to go to that one, but listen, we can't do it, and here's why. And Wentz can look at these guys and understand, hey, look, they've been there and done that before. So it has a different level of importance, effectiveness, when it's coming from someone who's been in that same position. John, we've talked to the receivers a lot about that with Greg Lewis. We've talked to Wendell Smallwood about that with Deuce Staley. So when you have a guy that has been there and done that, it just has a different level of effectiveness.
And Turron, when I look at the coaches, specifically Frank, the offensive coordinator, and John, the position coach, and even Doug to a certain extent, does the fact that they played the position translate to the autonomy they've given Carson at the line of scrimmage? Because let's face it, typically you want to scale back what you give young quarterbacks. And it seems like they've given Carson pretty much the whole playbook, at least early on.
I think it does say something to that effect, but really a lot of that to me is just based off of Wentz. And I've said it before, I don't think that there was a college quarterback prepared better to enter the NFL than Wentz last year. And it's amazing that we say that because he came from North Dakota State, an FCS school. But go back and watch the film. John, you've done it. You already see that he's making the calls at the line of scrimmage. He's changing the plays, changing protection. They run a West Coast-style offense. So this is not anything totally new to him. So he's already been built to handle this workload that he's given. And then not to mention the way that they brought him along. We just talked about the incubator that he's been in. So I think it's a combination of the two. And I don't think that this same success could have happened with a guy like a Jared Goff or some of these other Paxton Lynch. And, that's just a testament to Wentz and the coaching staff.
Turron Davenport with us, talking a little Eagles football. And, Turron, do you think the Eagles are getting enough from their wideouts? Is there more for them to give? And what role does Greg Lewis, because you talked about him a little bit, does he have in their development?
Yeah, Greg Lewis, his role in their development is just from a confidence side of things. And that's something that Nelson Aguilar has continued to work on, Josh Huff as well. Jordan Matthews just more or less had it. Dorial Green-Beckham is another one that, the whole willingness to go hard on every play, that's something that he feels he has to do. And I think that that's something that comes from Greg Lewis. Catching the football, dropping the football, that's something that is all dictated by confidence. Take, for instance, Josh Huff, his catch on the slant against the Colts in the preseason. You have to have confidence to be able to run through the catch. And when I say that, what I mean is you have to have confidence in your catching ability to not slow down when you're catching the ball on a slant like that, and then to be able to turn it up. So I think that's something that's coming from Greg Lewis, just the confidence side of things. As far as the production, yeah, you always want more production, and there are some plays that could have been made. Green-Beckham on the bomb along the sideline against the Steelers, the ball came out when he hit the ground. You got to make that catch. There's an opportunity for you to shine, and you got to take advantage of it, especially a guy like Green-Beckham who has the size, the speed, and everything that you want in a receiver. Nelson Aguilar had some opportunities. He's attacking the football. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to secure it all the way through the tuck on a couple plays, and the DB knocked it out. It's not necessarily a drop. He just didn't make the play, but there are plays that he did make. So there are things that you'll want more from the receivers without a doubt. The drops are happening, but at the same time, these guys are taking advantage of opportunities like Jordan Matthews. But I think on the receiver side of things, now that these tight ends, all three of them are healthy, you're going to see more 3 tight end sets, and you're going to be able to pass out of those. But I also think the Eagles are going to show some ace formation with 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and that is another way that it could affect the running game as far as giving the extra gaps and having extra guys to block for those gaps. So there are a lot of ways that, these guys can contribute more. I think we have to make sure that we make mention of the blocking downfield that you're getting from a Nelson Aguilar, a Green-Beckham, and these guys as well.
Well, since you brought up DGB, so do you foresee him having a bigger role as this season goes on? And in your mind, what is the best role for him on this team?
I think he's going to have a increased role, especially in the red zone. There are going to be points where they're going to have to just throw the ball up and let him go get it in a post-up type of situation, go get the rebound. I think his role in this team will continue to be something along the lines of what it is now, as far as allowing him to run that deep cross, allow him to run that slant route. But they need to take more advantage of his big play ability. The guy averaged, I think it was 17 yards a catch last year. So he's able to make big plays. They need to use him on the post. I would like to see them put him at the slot as well, because when you have that big body in the slot and he's in the middle of the field, that's a pretty big catching radius for your quarterback to throw the ball to. And he has the ability to catch it, break a tackle, and get you some yak. So I think his role is going to increase as they begin to get him more acclimated into the flow of the offense. Coach Peterson said that there have been multiple times where he was the initial read, but the way the play progressed, it caused Wentz to go elsewhere. So there's going to be a time where he's going to be more involved for sure.
Turron Davenport's with us. T Davenport _ NFL covers the Eagles for USA Today's Eagles wire. And you mentioned the tight ends, and now that Ertz is back, I think he's the best weapon they got, is specifically for Ertz's game. Ertz can move. I mean, excuse me, Wentz's game. He can move, but they haven't taken a lot of shots down the field with him, a lot of underneath stuff. So Ertz, to me, is a very intriguing weapon. So how do they work him back in and keep the other guys? Because it seems that Burton deserves playing time. Selleck has shown that he still deserves a role. Is there enough balls to go around for these three weapons who are all pretty good?
That's the thing with the Eagles. Matthews has said that he wants them to be like the Spurs, where on any given night someone could do all the scoring. When you look at Ertz, though, I agree with you as far as him being one of their best weapons, because he presents matchup problems for whether it be a linebacker on him or a corner especially, or even a safety. So it's all going to depend on how they're able to use him. I think they're going to move him around a bit more. We mentioned the 3 tight end sets, and I think they'll give that look to get the defense to get into their bigger, get out of their nickel formation. It's tough to go nickel against a 3 tight end set. So now you're setting him up to be able to walk outside, line up over top of the numbers, and go against a linebacker. And I take Zach Ertz against most of these linebackers in the NFL. So that's a situation where he could take advantage of. But in addition to that, his ability to work the middle of the field, his short-handedness is something that will allow Wentz to continue to go to him. You look at most quarterbacks, their best friend is a short-handed tight end, whether it be Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates, Tom Brady with Gronk, so on and so forth. So the Eagles have that in Wentz and Zach Ertz. And, Trey Burton is another guy, and Selleck is another one that you want to get the football to. But I think the biggest matchup problem for opposing defenses, as far as the tight ends are concerned, are Ertz. So they just have to move him around. I would like to see him in line. They need to use him in the slot and also out wide.
Hey, Turron, most of it has been good this year for the Eagles thus far, obviously. But there is some bad looming, and that's the fact that Lane Johnson, obviously in New York for his appeal of his 10-game PED suspension, that's going to – the other shoe is probably going to drop, whether it's this week, probably not, probably next week. What are the Eagles going to do if Lane is not available moving forward?
Well, you're going to see Alan Barber go back to a position that he's played before in right tackle, and that right away is a downgrade because Lane Johnson has been one of the best offensive linemen for the Eagles this year, especially in that Steelers game. He had a number of really good blocks to spring them for runs. With that being said, Steven Wisniewski will come in to play left guard, and then once Seumalo is healthy again, they'll compete for that spot, but they're definitely going to have to do some shuffling. But this just places all the more emphasis on, keeping a guy like Jason Peters healthy. Fortunately, their biggest free agent acquisition was Brandon Brooks, and he's on the right side, so they'll be able to still be right-handed, and that they'll run to the right a lot behind him. But it's definitely a bad thing for the Eagles losing Lane Johnson, so they'll have to shuffle some things around. I think they'll still be okay. I think that it's going to, force them to get into a few more max protection type situations when they want to get the ball downfield. But it's going to really push them also that rhythmic passing game, the quick reads, the catch and throw that Carson Wentz had worked on during training camp. I think that's really going to come into play, your 3-step, 5-step, quicker passing.
Real quick, let's fast forward to the weekend. Detroit Lions obviously not playing that well, Turron, but there's some talent there on that team. Matthew Stafford, first and foremost, has tremendous arm talent. Marvin Jones looks like a heck of a free agent signing. But that defense really banged up without Ziggy Ansah, DeAndre Levy. Talk about this matchup and how you think the Eagles really shape up against Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit is in the bottom 5 in pretty much every defensive category. So I think the offense will really be able to come into their own and carry on that momentum from the Steelers game. The pass rush is basically non-existent, as you mentioned. If they don't have Ziggy Ansah, they're going to be in trouble. He's their best pass rusher. So that'll give Wentz time to sit back there and pick the defense apart. Offensively, I think a guy like a Theo Reddick is someone that has to get some attention. He's one of the better guys in the screen game. So I want to see how they're able to use Jordan Hicks and Bradham. Malcolm Jenkins has also done a good job of coming up and blowing up the screens. So they're going to have to do that because they're going to try the Lions, that is. They're going to try those screens, and I wouldn't be surprised if they fake one and then try to go up top. So the corners are going to have to be ready. Marvin Jones, you mentioned him. I remember him coming out a couple years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago. And he was one of my favorite receivers coming out just because he's so fundamentally sound. You talk about a guy that could work the perimeter, and make amazing catches along the boundary. That's what he specializes in. Very good size, good downfield speed. He had 10 touchdowns at one point with the Bengals. So he's one of the leading receivers in the NFL right now. So he's going to draw a lot of attention. But then you got Golden Tate and Anquan Bolden, and these are guys that, are hard-nosed wide receivers that play the game like running backs, so they're going to try to get them the ball quickly and allow them to break tackles and make plays that way. So it's really going to be on the secondary and the linebacking core. That front four, what they bring. They bring that pressure, and that's what they're going to continue to do. And I think the Eagles come away convincingly, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's another 34-3, 35-7 type of win.
Well, you mentioned Marvin Jones. He was a guy I was intrigued for the Eagles to look at. He was a free agent this offseason.
Yeah.
I thought he would have been a good fit with Philly because of the inconsistencies that they have at wide receiver. You hit on the wide receivers a little bit, but last year in this game, the Eagles seemed to were beat in every which way possible, but they got beat big time in the secondary. That was the game where Carroll got hurt. The row was burned a bunch of times by Chad Johnson or Calvin Johnson, who's no longer here. You wonder if Detroit can take anything from it, because this is a completely different defense than the one they saw last year. And if the Lions think they can go after Carroll and some of these guys again, they might be sorely mistaken, because as you mentioned, this Jim Schwartz defense, and I'm sure he's got a little extra oomph this week against this team that got rid of him. He's probably going to be coming after these guys nonstop because he knows Matthew Stafford just about as good as anybody.
The last time Jim Schwartz was in Detroit, they carried him off the field because he won with the Buffalo Bills. You guys remember that. And just speaking of the Bills, in 2013, 36 sacks without Jim Schwartz. He gets there, 2014, 57 sacks. The proof is in the pudding. And you look at what the Eagles, they have 10 sacks already. They had, 37 last year. So up front, those guys are going to be pinning their ears back and coming after the quarterback. And the back end of the defense is only as good as the front end. So when you have guys up front that could shorten the amount of time the quarterback can hold the football and work through his progressions, that always helps the guys in the secondary. And that's something I've said over and over again. That back end is going to be helped by that ferocious pass rush up front, and it's showing.
Turron, what further can you tell us about Nigel Bradham?
Yeah, as of right now, he's out on the bond from the July assault charge, and this possessions one is I think it was a second-degree misdemeanor, one that they wouldn't even have brought him in had he not been out on bond. So I don't think that's going to be a major thing as far as what had come up with the any possible suspension or anything like that. He goes to court tomorrow for the July assault charge, so we'll see what comes out of that.
Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire, as the Eagles get ready for the Detroit Lions. That's this Sunday. Pre-game coverage on 97.3 ESPN starts at noon, and the kickoff, Merrill and Mike, at 1 p.m. We'll get you out on this one, Turron, and you look at Wentz. It's not too often you get to talk about the Eagles where his name doesn't come up, but 4 weeks in at the quarter poll now, does he take another step forward, in your opinion, or does he come back to earth as teams now, after 4 weeks, you start to find tendencies, you start to see things? I know he's only got 3 weeks, but do you think he kind of takes that step back, or do you think he is still ascending?
I think he's still ascending, especially this week against the Lions. I expect the 300-yard passing game, but you are right. There's tendencies that they'll be able to pick up. But one thing that I continue – listen, we haven't seen that full playbook. What they're able to do, and, John, you saw in training camp, how they were able to go against this defense with that 3 tight end set. That's going to be a whole new aspect that's going to be unleashed because these 3 guys haven't been healthy yet. So that's going to help Wentz also. There's going to be a point where you're going to have that game and you're just going to say, wow, you know what, we expected better. But that's to happen. I mean, although they call him the Ginger Jesus, he's not Jesus Christ, so he's not perfect. So you're going to have those bad games, but I think it's going to be limited. And he'll continue to protect the football very well like he has.
All right, Turron Davenport, everybody. Make sure you check him out, @Davenport_NFL on Twitter. Eagles Wire at USA Today for more on this Eagles-Lions matchup and all the information for the Eagles as they return from the bye. Good stuff, Turron. We appreciated it.
Thanks a lot of fun. Hey, John, I know you saw Deshaun Kaiser this past weekend also.
Yeah, I love him. Number one.
Yes, sir.